High Elves are the coolest. Yeah, look how cool these guys are. I mean, really take a good hard look. You got two different types of model, got leaf-shaped blades, cool helmets, add in a metal command group, and you have something that looks pretty awesome. In all seriousness, though, by today's standards, this doesn't look very cool. But compare it to these, or any other plastic sets at the time, and you can see where the High Elves just stand above. At least that's what went through my mind as a 12-year-old and my 12-year-old budget. So I picked up this set, and they were the first High Elf models I ever painted. And I wish I still had them to show you, but they got melted.
You cursed brat! Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world!
But what I really liked about the High Elves was the characters and the monsters. They just seemed so much cooler than all the other types out there. Most especially this guy. This model was my ultimate fascination. Epic monster, sweet character on top. I just had it all. I actually have old journals where I write about ordering this and waiting for it, just being so excited to get it. And the day finally arrived, and I got it home, built it, primed it, and never painted it. And I honestly don't know exactly why. As I think back about it, I can really only think that it might be because of these guys. Now, I'm not trying to advocate for this, but on some level, everybody kind of expects certain armies to look a certain way. And I get from a gaming perspective, if you're looking at somebody's army across the table, you want to know what each unit is. And so I thought that this red and green armor was the only way Dragon Princes were supposed to look. And really, I just didn't want to paint those colors. Back then, like, red was just notoriously hard to paint. And I really, really liked the white and blue effects. So even though my plan was to go white and blue for everything, I just didn't know how to pull it off on a monster and a rider like this. So yeah, I never painted this, but maybe I'll save it for another project later down the line. What is important, though, is that you understand how much I love dragons. And not just dragons, but Caledor, the High Elf realm where dragons come from. Because not only are dragons cool, but the elves that live in Caledor are portrayed as the most badass elves in the entire planet. Somewhere around this time where I'm debating painting this guy, I get my grubby hands on the High Elf Army book. And this to me is the ultimate tome of High Elves. This is the most detailed explanations of all the big world-shaping events that happened in the Warhammer world. But then they also had updated sculpts for the Sword Masters and the White Lions of Trace. So then I set to work on getting a true, proper High Elf army going. And I'm happy to say I did get quite a few things done. Did a unit of White Lions, some characters, the Eltharion model, some silver helms. So an eclectic mix of different units, but never quite finished a full painted army. Soon after this, the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game came out, and I focused most of my painting efforts on that for a while until the 6th edition High Elf Army book was released. And oh my gosh, did this reignite me. Essentially, the whole range was refreshed and updated, but most importantly, these guys came out. So I set out to paint all the new plastic core units, and then have a big unit of Dragon Princes as the centerpiece. So when I set out to start painting this, I wanted the cavalry units, the silver helms and the Dragon Princes, to be heavy metal quality. So yeah, I think I did a pretty good job, but it took forever. I wish I had more of the models in hand to show more pictures of it, but the ones I do have, I'm very happy with. This first model is the champion of the Dragon Princes. Then I also converted and hand painted a battle standard bearer. This banner is actually made out of a manila file folder that I cut to shape, and then I just painted this dragon picture on it. I also hand painted the design on his shield. And what did I get for all my hard efforts? I got to field an army that was just terrible. I'm not going to get into the specifics here, but just suffice it to say it was a tough army to play with. So I semi-retired the army until this beautiful army book was released. This golden era is the only time that High Elves truly felt like High Elves should be. So I enjoyed this army while it lasted, and painted up some new models like the new dragon and Prince Tyrion. But
slowly the days turned sour, and the watchful nights closed in.
Now, all jokes aside, I actually did try to make Age of Sigmar work, but my High Elves just didn't seem to fit. I ended up trying Cities of Sigmar army with some Phoenix Guard and some Sisters of Avalorn, and I painted them up real nice and did some nice freehands and learned some new army painting techniques, and I liked the look of the army, and it got phased out. Which brings me to the present with Old World. And maybe, just maybe, I can do a proper Caledor army.
For he had seen dragonfire in the sky, and a city turned to ash. And he never forgave, and he never forgot.
So now on to the planning stage. A quick Google search of Caledor, and you get these old heraldry books that detail some of the different designs for, we'll say, lords or providences of Caledor. And this served as a good starting point for the inspiration. This guy here kind of seemed like where I wanted to go. A little bit of gold armor and then some red being the primary color here. But I wasn't really sold on how this would look across a whole army. So then I found this little piece of artwork, and this seems more like where I wanted to go. The gold is much more front and center. The red is striking and catches the eye. And as you look closely, there's little hints of green, and the metallic areas, the steel, little bits of blue, are little nuggets, little accent colors that really add to the overall look. So the next portion of the High Elf army was to add some fire support and some magic support. So got a mage going here, and then I decided to do a combo unit here of archers, Tracian woodsmen, and Sisters of Avalorn. The last thing I want here is to build a unit, paint it up, and then never use it again. So figure finding a way to get these to count as multiple things, especially as I'm learning to play, etc., would be a good idea. So I had some extra Sisters of Avalorn bows, a couple extra heads, and then as I looked at the White Lion kit, there are 3 extra axes after you build a command group. So in total I have 3 guys with axes and 4 Sisters of Avalorn looking models. It's been a while since I've properly kit bashed or converted any models, and this was a fun little side project. Now on to painting. So if you watch my last video, you'll know what I did here to prep the model. I primed it with a red-brown primer from Steinelrez, and then I used a beige and a white to provide a gradient on the zenithal. Same colors here for the contrasts as well. Use Gilliman Flesh, Gorgonta Fur, a Yandin Yellow, and Flesh Terrors Red. So first up is Gilliman Flesh, obviously hitting the face and the hands here. Then I also use it for the hair. And yeah, I use it for the cloak. You'll see why in a second. Switching now to Gorgrunta fur, and this is mostly just hitting the boots. And then they have like little side pouches here that I hit as well. And then I also get any straps or quivers. And the only steel portions across the whole unit are these 3 axe blades. So I'm glad I have them in the unit, otherwise that would miss one of the key things that tie the forces together. So then I use a Yandin yellow to do all the gold portions. Initially I was planning on doing the bows like a green fire color, but in the end there just isn't enough gold on these models, and I wanted to keep the theme of the army intact. Now on to the red. Now one thing about these old High Elf archer models is they like to be a little scandalous and show a fair bit of leg. And that leg is really the only portion where you can do a different color that accents the model. Otherwise you just have these little sashes. So as I got to this point and got all the main colors blocked in, I realized I needed to zhuzh it up a little bit. No self-respecting archer would go to war without a fair bit of embroidery on his cloak or on his tunic. So I started by just doing a little hem line across the model here, trying to keep it as even and as straight as I can, but not being too particular here. This is my test model, but I want to be mindful that I'm going to have to do this across 20 models. So now you see why I made the cloak a flesh color. I want to just do a little freehand scales here to simulate. One, they're from Caledor, so I assume when a dragon sheds its skin, they don't just toss it. So they're using it here as protection. Kind of accounts as lion cloak here if I want. And I think this, again, ties the unit to Caledor. And this process is not something to even stress about. Just little dabs and dots and fill it in, and you can do something that looks pretty convincing fairly quickly. And as you'll see is the caption down there. This is for all 20 models, but I spent 3.5 hours of just painting the flesh tears red across the whole unit. Which might sound like a lot, but it's really not that much time per model. So here's the test model once all the contrast is done and he's ready for his oil wash. You can see I added a little bit of extra freehand to his tunic. Again, no self-respecting elf would go without looking fancy. So I painted the character kind of simultaneously as I'm doing the rest of the unit, and you'll see all that green on his cloak. That's actually sprue goo that I used to fill in some rough texture on his cape. You'll find with some of these old metal models they kind of disintegrate or fall apart a little bit, where they just have some texture there. So sprue goo, even after prime, nice easy way to fix that. So I blocked in some free hands on his cloak, a compass, and some circly trim because he's fancy character model. So here's some of the choice models after the oil wash is complete. This is still drying, but you get an effect here. I kind of buff it a little bit more from here, but you can see I added even more trim, painting more freehand to that axe guy, some of these other models. So I varied up the freehands. Banners are different, kind of drew my own elven runes. And here's the mage after oil wash as well. And onto the highlighting stage. And really these archer models, there's not a whole lot to show in the highlights. I was able to do it all in 2 hours. And a good portion of that was in the non-metallic metal on these axe heads here. So show you a little bit more of that. I want to keep that oil wash, that light from that intact, and I'm just trying to enhance it here. I use blue-gray to kind of trace the edges. So I do the outside edges and the bevel edge. Just trying to define that, and then I border the one bright highlight on the axe blade just to give it a little bit of a transition from the darker section of the blade. So the little side quest I have for this army is how can I paint convincing non-metallic metal in as few or as little or as quick as steps as I possibly can. So just experimenting here, tracing the edges. This doesn't look very good at the moment, but lays the foundation for the brighter highlights to come. Now this axe blade actually took the oil wash much better. It has a better effect, maybe because of the angle and the position of the axe just lets the oil wash fall a little bit better. So this one was much easier to get the effect. The other two axe blades were a little tougher, but I still think they came out all right. The same thing here. I'm just tracing the edges with this blue-gray color. Just get all the edges here. It's kind of an easy trick to start defining non-metallic metals. So now I'm coming in with a 50-50 roughly mix of the blue-gray and that blue-white from Pro Acryl. And here I'm just adding like to the bright spot on this axe blade. It's almost pure white because I wiped it off, wiped the oil wash off there, made sure it didn't cover it fully. But it's a little rough, so I wanted to brighten that up, but I still leave a little bit of that, gives a little bit of color interest to the blade there without totally wiping it all out. But the rest of it, I just dot, put little bright spots, just trying to define, making it look shiny. Now I'm coming back in with pure blue-white and just doing the brightest highlights, getting that bright spot in. And I feathered it here a little bit to blend it, and just little touches, little dots, making sure it's got these bright spots. Same plan here on this axe, just coming in with that mid-tone bright mix, hitting the brightest spot here, filling that in a little bit heavier, and then just tiny little touches, kind of middle-sized highlights through the rest of the blade. Kind of feather it here a little bit, just want to blend it, but moving super quickly. Now I'm here with the pure blue-white again, and just hitting those top edges, making sure those are bright and look like shiny metal. And here is the finished result. You can see about 16 hours total. This is assembly and paint. And at first I thought that was a failure. I'd spent way too much time. But then as I divided it out per model, it was about 50 minutes per model. So in light of that, and factoring in all the freehand and extra stuff I did on these models, I'm really happy with how they look and the time commitment. And here is the mage. I didn't do any extra converting or anything on him, just wanted to pay homage to this old sculpt and give him a little bit of unique freehanding. Figure he's kind of like a seer or something like that, so compass seemed to be the right play for his freehands. But anywho, thanks for sticking with me this long. More to come for sure. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you in the next one.